Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Open Air presented by the Harvey B. Gantt Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm your host, Dexter Wimberly, and as always, I'm delighted to introduce today's guest. Jeremy Okai Davis was born in Charlotte, North Carolina. He received a BFA in painting from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. He relocated to Portland, Oregon in 2007, where he continues his studio practice alongside work as a graphic designer and illustrator. His work has been shown nationally at the Studio Museum of Harlem, the Jordan Schnitzer Museum of Art in Portland, Wanawari in Seattle, and the rotating art program at Portland International Airport. His work is included in the permanent collections of the Lonnie B. Harris Black Cultural Center at Oregon State University and the Portland Art Museum. He is represented by Elizabeth Leach Gallery. His current exhibition, Presence of Color, will be on view at the Harvey B. Gantt Center from March 20th of this year to April 26th of 2026. Please join me in welcoming Jeremy to today's conversation. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Dexter?
I'm good. I'm excited about our talk. This is our first time to really kind of get into a conversation about your work and about your life. And I guess we can start by like grounding ourselves. Like, where are you located right now? I'm assuming you're in your studio, but maybe you can kind of give us a clue as like where you are.
Yeah, I'm in Portland, Oregon, is where I live currently, and I'm in my studio, my downtown studio. I have a smaller studio located in my backyard that I spend a little bit of time in, but most of my time I'm down here, my downtown Portland studio.
How does it feel to have a show back in North Carolina in Charlotte,
Oh
being in Portland after all these years?
man, it feels really good. It's just now, well, not just now, like in the last like month or so, since everything started rolling, it's starting to really hit me. Because me and we've been working on this exhibit or talking about it for like 3 or 4 years. So I've been really excited about it that long, but it's never felt completely like it's happening up until like I started getting emails from the Gantt and yeah, just getting this squared away and sending off labels for the pieces, everything getting picked up. But yeah, it feels really good. It feels like a definitely like a milestone for me, like something that I'm really proud to having been from Charlotte and kind of cut my teeth there, then moved away and try to build my career, being able to come back to Charlotte with like a mature body of work um, feels really good.
Yeah, yeah, I totally understand that. And I'm kind of curious, like, how does it even feel to present your work in a city that, has such a strong Black population, given the subject matter of this particular exhibition? Were you thinking about that in terms of developing this body of work, like where it would be seen?
I'm always thinking about where the work is going to be seen. I mean, this it's interesting because this body of work was created 3, 4 years ago. It's a kind of a collection of some paintings that I started in 2019 and had about three shows built around it from 2019 to around 2022. So this is kind of like a retrospective in a way, like kind of bringing this work back to life. So that part of it is really exciting because I thought that this work was just going to live in collections. So yeah, it feels really good to have it in Charlotte, like with a stronger Black community than Portland has, obviously. The work was created for everybody, not necessarily for Black people, but it definitely speaks to our people, my people. So yeah, I'm really excited that it gets to be displayed for a broader community now.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Have cited, if I'm not mistaken, you've cited artists like Jasper Johns and Andy Warhol and Robert Rauschenberg and even Chuck Close
Yeah.
as formative influences. I'd love to hear a little bit about like what is it about their work that was so influential to you, and how do you sort of locate your work in relation to that sort of art history?
It's interesting that those names they still influence my work, but that was college. Like when I was in college, these are the people that I was learning about. These are the people that were in the textbooks. Um, these are the people that my professors were, I wouldn't say pushing towards me, but those were the ones that um, were visible to me. It wasn't until I graduated. There was a couple names that I heard, but it wasn't until I graduated and really moved out here, which is kind of like backwards, coming to a population that doesn't have as many Black people. That's when I started learning about the Black artists that weren't really exposed to me back in the day. But yeah, I mean, my history with art kind of comes from, or my interest in it kind of comes from a pop art place. Like I kind of started at pop art. Andy Warhol was one of the first people that was really interesting to me. Basquiat was another one of those. But yeah, Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns to me, the kind of precursors to pop art, were doing this kind of gritty, kind of just grabbing whatever they can and putting into the piece. That was always really interesting to me. And a lot of my early work kind of leaned in that direction. It wasn't until I found out about like the Kerry James Marshalls and the Kehinde Wileys and those people and some even earlier artists, Black artists that I started like kind of shifting the focus of my practice a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting how the educational environment, particularly higher ed or MFA programs and things like that, can have such a sort of like profound influence on what artists sort of prioritize as important, sort of how they start to sort of create these hierarchies of like artists, like who's the most important artist in a particular category. Obviously, we know that the history, art history as it's been taught in America, probably until fairly recent years, has been driven by a certain kind of narrative, the white male artist, lone
Yeah.
genius, yada, yada, yada. We've kind of heard it ad infinitum. And a lot of that was marketing more than reality. There's probably a lot more similarities between artists of all backgrounds in terms of how they sort of, you know, think about their work, think about themselves, the securities, the insecurities, the challenges, kind of like that kind of crosses a lot of different, I think, boundaries. But can you talk about your studio practice a little bit? Like when you're in the studio, how much time do you spend like reading or doing research versus actually creating work? Because I think that's always an interesting balance. Some artists spend a lot more time doing research than they actually spend creating work.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think mine is, I would say 50-50, but there's always like this moment where the research kind of stops. Um, and then I'm focused on the painting. Uh, my practice typically starts with an idea. Like if I have like a body of work that I'm creating, if we're talking about this presence of color work, um, I've had that idea kind of percolating. We can talk more about it later, but the Shirley card idea from 2015 is when I found out about those. And the idea of the show was kind of percolating in my mind from that point. I was reading about it, but it wasn't until I really found like a focus for the show that I started really leaning into like what the paintings were going to look like. Then I started doing like internet research, library research, um, artist research, just different things like that. So it starts with the research that kind of takes the bulk of my studio practice for a couple weeks, couple months. At the same time, I'm working, I'm drawing, I'm sketching, um, doing little mock-ups, like little smaller paintings in preparation for the larger works. But then it shifts when it's time to like lock in and start making the paintings. That kind of takes the focus. But I will say at the same time, there is YouTube. I'm listening to YouTube videos or watching YouTube videos, listening to podcasts while I'm working. So that's always entering my mind while I'm working. Um, so that research that's kind of working kind of concurrently with the painting definitely like influences what's happening. So it's kind of a mixed bag.
Talk a little bit more about the Shirley card, and it's been coming up, and I wouldn't say a lot, but it certainly has been coming up more frequently in the past few years as something people are sort of reflecting on and thinking about in the context of this time we're living in now. So, for the there may be people who watch this in the future who don't even know what the Shirley card is. So maybe you can kind
Yeah.
of give a little bit of a lesson on what that is.
Yeah, so I'll say how I came to it. I was working on a body of work in 2015. Like I mentioned, there was a show that I did called "Those Days Are Over," which was um, a body of work that was based around these photos that I received from a previous landlord of this group of friends that were traveling the Northwest mostly, and it was all documentation of like film photography documentation of this group of friends. And in finding out about that, I did a little bit of photography. I still shoot a little bit, but I was really curious about this idea of documentation and physical documentation and photographs. So I was doing these paintings about that. And in doing that, I was looking up different types of film that was used in the 80s and 70s when these photographs were taken. And that kind of steered me in this direction of Kodak. The Kodak 200 gold film, I think it's the one that was the first one that was created that kind of took into account darker complexions. So that really opened like a light bulb moment for me. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That when did that happen? Like when that it wasn't taken into account before the 80s. What was it like before then? So I just went down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out kind of the history of film and documentation and who was excluded and who was included in that. And that's when I found out about the Shirley cars, which were these cards basically that Kodak used. In I think they were discovered in like or created in the 40s and used to calibrate film. And back then, obviously, they weren't necessarily taking into account darker complexions because you
Yeah.
can look at the cards you can find them online now pretty readily. These cards had a Caucasian woman, and then it had these color bars, like these like CMYK or RGB color bars, and a grayscale. And in some of the cards, the ones that really struck a nerve for me were the ones that said normal, like it'll have normal. Um, and in my mind, I was like, oh, so the Caucasian, the lighter complexion is normal. Um, that's not right. So I went down that rabbit hole and started thinking about what I could do to kind of turn the tables, kind of course correct a little bit, but at the same time, find a way to educate people through the work. Because that's another thing that I try to pay attention to with the work, the paintings that I'm doing. I want them to be attractive, obviously, but I also want there to be like a lesson, something didactic that people are taking from them. So I started figuring out how I could make a body of work that kind of course corrected that misrepresentation or lack of representation, but at the same time kind of opened a window to a little bit of education of Black culture in the 40s and 50s and 60s and beyond. And that's what took me to kind of early Jet magazine and Ebony magazines, which were the focus of the subjects in a lot of the paintings were discovered through some of my research looking into those old publications.
Yeah, it's really interesting because growing up, spending a lot of time looking at Ebony and Jet as well, um, that media really influenced how I thought about like the world and sort of like advertising and lifestyle and all of that. And
Yeah.
then it made the more mainstream or white publications seem a little bit more alien to me in some ways. And it's funny they use the word normal as a calibration, right? Like, so let's start here, like, if this is normal, you go to the left or the right of that. But there's some interesting parallels in terms of like how technology today, mobile technology, cell phones, even the cameras we're using now for these online like video chat platforms, still, in my opinion, aren't quite right in terms of how they they deal with like skin color and light and all of those things. But kind of bringing this into your exhibition, Presence of Color. So talk about the individuals or the people who are featured in these paintings. I imagine they're not models, but are they everyday folks? Like, where are you getting these images from?
Yeah, it was kind of a mix because I was looking at some of the old Jet magazines, and in a lot of them, a lot of the publications, the covers, sometimes they would have celebrities, but a lot of times they would have just beauty queen winners that weren't nationally known, like the Chicago beauty queen, or some of like the debutantes from social life in Chicago, or close to the Johnson publication. So um, there's a couple. There's a few paintings in the show. There's a woman named Nellie Hill who was a model. She's in the paintings, but then there's also ones like Angela Davis is in the show, who graced the cover of a Jet magazine. I think in probably would have been the '60s, early '70s. The one that I pulled from. Um, then some of the people featured in the show are discoveries that I made flipping open the magazine and seeing some of the stories, or like the little blips about people. There's a painting of Muriel Smith, who was a singer that I found out about. We'll look at one of her slides later. So yeah, there's a number of people, different from kind of every level of acclaim, celebrity, to like your average people that I'm trying to feature, because I wanted to show the show to um, kind of touch on every element of blackness. Like, there's celebrity blackness, and there's people that are just living life, and might get a chance to grace the cover of a magazine, and that's like their one moment of acclaim in their life. And I wanted to use the show, and I wanted to use some of these pieces to kind of elevate that moment in time for them, to kind of remind people that they existed, they were there for a time. Whether it was this small blip, 1 month or 1 week of being on the cover, those still exist, and we still exist, and they still exist. So yeah, it kind of ran the gamut of more celebrity to lesser known people.
Well, let's start the slideshow because we have a half dozen images, and I think it would be great to be able to look at them and talk more specifically about the subjects. So maybe you can just give us a little bit of background on each image as we go through them, and then I have a few follow-up questions.
Yeah, so with the slides that I sent, I tried to find a few from, like I mentioned, there were three different bodies of work that I created based around these Shirley cards. This one here is called "Be Beautiful Every Day," and this was in the last body of work that I did. And it's funny thinking about the pop art kind of reference. This piece kind of leans more into that pop art idea that I was exploring way back in the day, and I kind of brought it back for this piece. I was looking at some of the advertisements that were in Ebony and Jet, and these images, the three that are featured here, come from an afro, a wig advertisement that I thought was really interesting. These women that were featured, and the wigs and the names. I don't know if you can see the titles. The smaller one on the left, my left here, is called "The Casual," and the larger image is "The Freedom." And I thought that casual freedom, that mix of names for a hairstyle, was really interesting. So I wanted to kind of play with that idea. And the "Be Beautiful Every Day" was the tagline for the advertisement. So I tried to push that out a little bit. And then you can kind of see these color bars that are kind of obscured a little bit in the bottom of the piece. Those color
Hmm.
bars kind of come and go in all the paintings, and those are a reference to the Shirley cards that you'll see. That if you were to look up the Shirley cards, you'll see these color bars that are included. So this piece was kind of like an amalgam of a lot of different things that I was thinking about over the course of the body of work.
Can you talk a little bit about your use of color in this particular work, like the choice? I mean, it's interesting that the blue, purplish blue hue on the skin, even though it is not the color of black skin, it immediately feels like black skin.
Yeah, the advertisement is black and white, and also this piece doesn't really speak to. Yeah, I use this technique a little bit where it's a little bit more grayscale kind of painting. A lot of my paintings have like the pixelation and pointillism. You'll see that in a few in the later slides. But yeah, I was thinking about just this blue. In the blue, I was thinking about the jazz music and Blue Note records and some of those like kind of that tone of the record sleeves that you would see for Blue Note. So I was kind of playing with that idea. Also, it's in the shape of a vinyl, so I was thinking about that as a reference point as well. And yeah, the automatic reference to it being a black person, I think, is just the hair, obviously, and then just the style of the proportion of the faces and things that I'm playing with. And yeah, it just comes across. And I think there's a power in the faces. The smaller face, I think there's like a kind of I guess a sadness, but also kind of a strength that comes across that I think reads as a perseverance and strength, and that automatically to me reads as African American and black. So yeah, I think it's pretty clear that these are black women that you're looking at when you see the piece.
It's interesting as well that it has this square shape because it immediately evokes, and I think you just mentioned this, an album cover.
Yeah.
And that makes me think about my childhood. I spent a lot of time reading liner notes of my parents'
Oh,
albums. Um, Even if it was music I wasn't necessarily into, I was still into the design of these album covers, which from a graphic design standpoint, it's probably still to this day some of the best graphic designs I've ever seen. That freedom that artists had in the '60s and '70s, particularly black artists like Parliament Funkadelic and artists like that. Their album
mhm.
covers were just wild, and I don't think have been matched to this
Yeah.
day. And then what's interesting is that early hip hop albums really pulled from that. So if you look at album covers from the mid to late '80s, you see that direct influence of like trying to pull from that graphic design language of the '60s and '70s, funk music, jazz, etc.
Oh,
And
for
I
sure.
see that coming through in some of your work as well. Let's go to the next image.
Yeah. So this one here is a study. It's a smaller piece, a study for another painting that you'll see later in the slides. This is Thelma Johnson Street, who was a, a Pacific Northwest. She lived in Portland, born in Yakima, Washington, but grew up in Portland, Oregon. And this is a study for a piece that I was doing for as a commission for the Portland Airport. And I was looking at different images of her, and this one struck me, just the gaze and the pose. And I wanted to take away a lot of the chatter that you'll see in a lot of my paintings around it and focus strictly on her portrait. Um, Shoulders up, the eyes. I was playing a little bit more with a little less of a background in it, just kind of using the kind of the solid magenta that you'll see there, and letting the figure kind of speak more than anything else. But yeah, Thelma Johnson Street was a really important artist of her time, or I would say not important. Important in her time, but not remembered as an important person. I didn't know who she was. I had never heard of this woman up until probably 2015. maybe after that even. But she was a black artist from the Northwest that actually was Diego Rivera's main assistant on a lot of the murals that he worked on. She was commissioned through the WPA back then. Dancer, she's the first black female artist to be collected by MoMA. So just a lot of really important things that she did over the course of her life that I don't believe people and we were talking about the things that you learn in college, the Jasper Johns and the Warhols and some of these names. People like this need to be included in those stories. So a lot of the paintings that they do and the people that I include in my paintings are an attempt to bring these people to spotlight, bring these people to recognition. So this painting and the one that you'll see of her later is that attempt to make her bring her relevance back to note.
You mentioned the Portland airport. Can you talk a little bit about that commission, what it entails, and even how does it feel to have your work seen in that kind of environment?
Oh yeah, so one of the biggest moments of my career up until this Charlotte show was my exhibit at the Portland airport. I had a 2 year long exhibit in one of the terminals, and that's kind of what turned my gallery that I show with onto me.
Hmm.
And a lot of Portland found out about my work, and a lot of people nationwide found out about my work through traveling through the airport. So after having that show, I think their notice of me became larger. So I had a show there that was 2017 to 2019, and then I had my first show with my gallery, and they decided to commission a piece that there was a piece that they wanted that was in the show that sold. So they had me do a piece that was comparable to that, and I wanted to, instead of using the Ebony and Jet magazines that I was using, I wanted to find somebody more relevant to the Pacific Northwest. So that's how the Thelma Johnson Street got included. But yeah, it was having them commission me. That they reached out to the gallery, and the gallery kind of connected with me, and we kind of had a back and forth about what they wanted, and kind of made that happen. Yeah, the commission work is a significant chunk of my practice, actually, like different commissions, public art commissions, and things like that. So it was just another one of those that I was working on with them.
Yeah, I'll come back to that later because I know there are a lot of artists that have questions about that process and what kind of they can do to better position themselves for those opportunities. But
Oh, yeah.
let's go to the next image, and I'll definitely come back to that topic.
Okay, yeah. So this is the Angela Davis piece that was included in the first exhibition I had, the initial Presence of Color exhibition I had in 2019. This painting was in it. And yeah, it's Angela Davis. This was from, I don't remember the exact cover, but it was from one of the Jet magazine covers. And I was working on this portrait and finished the face. This is a typical way that I paint. I usually finish the face first, and then I work on the rest of it. But I finished the face, and I had this big pink afro that was there, and I think I posted it online or posted on Instagram or somewhere. One of my good friends, another artist, noticed it, and he was like, "Leave it. I love that hair." So I left it like that, and I'd been working with this imagery, this kind of chevron, the bars that kind of cross on her chest, and a few other
Sure.
pieces. So I included that in this one, and those are kind of my symbol. That for me, they represent kind of a sort of shield, protection of Black stories, of Black people. You'll see those pop up in another piece in these slides, and I'm not sure if there's any more in the show, but there's a few more pieces in my collections of people with this kind of armor, kind of shield that I created using these chevrons. So that's what the black stripes that kind of angle towards the middle of her are.
You-
And this piece also is a good representation of the application and the pointillism that you'll see in my pieces when you look at the portrait and some of the abstraction of the backgrounds.
Can you talk a little bit more about this idea of the shield and protection that those chevrons represent?
Yeah, I did a painting, a couple portraits, and I think shortly before this body of work, and I was I'm not sure why the chevrons came up, but I was trying to think of something, I some sort of something that kind of represented quickly and obviously uh, protection of stories. Some of the stories that kind of get pushed aside and not held on to, and yeah, that imagery just came to my mind. I think I was in my sketchbook just drawing and trying out different ideas, and those lines kind of came to my mind. They're graphic, they're quick. Like I said, I work as a graphic designer, so um, yeah, a lot of these like quick ideas and just like sketches turn into larger elements in my paintings, and that's just another one of those that kind of stuck out.
Fantastic. Let's go to the next image. I think we have three more.
So yeah, here's another one that this is the other one that kind of includes that. That Angela Davis piece was one of the first ones in the body of work. This was towards the end. I was trying to find kind of a pair, kind of a pair for that piece. So I kind of flipped it with the darker background, a younger subject. I wanted to find a young girl, young black girl with a similar kind of afro to kind of play both sides of the timeline of life, thinking about future and what's ahead for people, but also including the shield and protecting young people, protecting young black people, black women. Um, that's what this piece is about. And I wanted to play with the dark and the light because I was also thinking about this idea of photography and dark coming or it's light coming from dark, like stories coming from dark places. Um, and that's what I was thinking with the darker version of the Angela Davis piece. And the 25 up toward the 25 cents up towards the top, that's a reference to the price that you'd see on some of the early Jet and Ebony magazines. That's a sticker. And if you when you see this piece in person, that 25 is also has like a little bit of a texture, kind of a gritty texture that provides a little bit more interest when you see the piece in person.
Can you talk a little bit more about the materials you use? Are you painting with oil? Are you painting with acrylic? Is this on board? Is it on canvas? Those kinds of details.
Yeah, all these pieces that you're looking at are acrylic on canvas. I've worked with acrylic my whole career. I think I took a class in college with oil paints, and I just had the hardest time with it. And I remember just being like kind of beat up by it. And then the next class I took was with acrylics, and that just worked for me. So I've always worked with acrylics. One thing that I attempt to do with my use of acrylics is I kind of cut it with a lot of mediums, a lot of gel mediums and matte mediums, and to kind of play with the thickness of the paint to almost give it an illusion of oil paint. So when you see it's acrylic. It has that plasticky feel, but it also has a little bit more of like a depth and texture that you would get with oil paint, and also with the way that I paint people and the way that I paint in general. The speed of drying is really important to me. So the acrylics just work for me because I'm building up a lot of layers and a lot of textures really quickly. I want to build those really quickly, and oil paint just stays wet too long for me to do that. So the acrylics have always been, I would say easier, but just more made more sense for what I'm trying to do. I can cut it with water to create the drips and all the different elements that I want in my pieces to kind of give the viewer interest when they see the pieces in person.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Let's go to the next image.
Okay, so this is the finished piece that was based around that study earlier of Thelma Johnson Street. So you have the portrait that you saw earlier, just played on a different background, the blue background, with a lot more elements. That same chevron comes in for protecting stories. Um, I did this kind of grayscale kind of image of her dancing because I wanted her
Mm.
practice to be very clear when you look at it. She was a painter, but also was a performer, a dancer. And I found that image of her dancing that I thought was really beautiful, that pose. So I put that up there at the top. And then The text Hue is another publication that I was unaware of until I started doing some research. It was another Black centric social publication around the 50s and 60s that targeted Black stories. So that was included there as well. But I also wanted to play with this idea of my paintings, the way that I paint people. There's a lot of different hues and colors that I include in the portraits. There's not a lot of blending that happens. I'm using like almost like a pointillistic pixelate. I call them pixels, but it's basically pointillism style to paint. So I was kind of playing with that idea of all the different hues that I'm using in these skin tones to create the portrait. So that's the inclusion of the magazine title. Kind of pushes forward the style of painting that I do, and then you'll see the color dots at the bottom that are another reference to
Mhm.
the color bars and the colors from the Shirley cards. And yeah, a
Yeah,
lot
I was
more.
also
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I was curious about the figure on the right, but you explained that. And when it comes to these publications, are you do you actually collect them? Do you have an archive of these publications, or is it all digital? Can you talk a little bit about that process?
It's kind of a mix. I have a handful that I've bought off of eBay, some that I've found at thrift stores. The Hue magazine, I think I have 3 or 4 of those that I got off of eBay. I have some old Jet magazines that I've had for a long time. But a lot of the research that I did came from a digital file that I was able to purchase. It was a CD that I purchased that I had may have had like 500 different publications that I used for a lot of the imagery. But so it's kind of a mixed bag. I have some digital files that I look at for reference, reading some of the stories, but then I also have some of um, the physical copies that are kind of the bigger impact for me is to actually feel and touch the physical ones that make me kind of send me back in time to the time that these things were happening. The digital definitely kind of eliminates a lot of the nostalgia when you're looking at them. But when you feel the physical ones and you can see those physical ones, it really kind of puts you in the moment and kind of sends me there lot, a lot
Yeah,
better.
yeah, very true, very true. I think our final image is next.
Yeah, so this is I think I mentioned Muriel Smith earlier as one of the subjects that I used in the paintings. This was from a body of work. It was the second show that I had based around the Shirley cards, and this is, like I said, a painting of Muriel Smith, kind of cropped at the top. Just some backstory on her. When I was doing the research, her image popped up. She might be on one of the covers, but I think I saw like a little blip about her visiting Paris, performing in Paris, and that stuck out to me. So I just did a lot more research on her and found out that she was a singer, a really amazing singer. When I bought a few of her records and listened to her on Spotify, and just her voice blew me away. But I found out that she was used a lot of times as a ghost singer, which was a new term for me that I was unaware of. Basically, um, there's the Moulin Rouge, the original Moulin Rouge movie about Toulouse-Lautrec. The piece is called Toulouse, based off of that. Zsa Zsa Gabor plays one of the characters, and there's this very dramatic performance that she gives at the beginning, singing. She's going down steps and just very dramatic. But it's not her singing. It's Muriel Smith doing the voice. And to me, the performance is one thing, her doing her thing, but the voice is the thing that really draws people. Um, so that stuck out to me. This idea of having Black voices and the people that supplied those voices muted in a way, like their visuals being muted. So that's kind of what I was playing with this image, having her a portion of her cropped out, but including the lower portion with the mouth, the beautiful dress she's wearing, that pose I thought was really incredible. I don't do a lot of, at this point, actually, I wasn't doing a lot of full figures or waist up figures. So this was kind of a different painting for me, a difficult painting for me to do the patterns on the dress. But I had a lot of fun with it. The bars at the top, again, that's a reference to the Shirley cards, but also a reference to the records back then, the RCA records. I think it was RCA had the logo had those circles on them. kind of interlocked. So that's a reference to that. But also just highly graphic. I like the graphic nature of those circles and kind of juxtaposed with the pointillistic style that I'm painting. Just made a really nice composition, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really does. And I was curious about the figure because it is quite different from the works we've seen prior in terms of the more focus on the face and the portraiture aspect of the work. And this feels like a more of an exploration of not only the body but also fashion in some ways as well. No, really, really fantastic work.
Thank you.
I want to circle back to, and I think that's our final image. I want to circle back to our conversation about public art a bit, because obviously it's not it's not everything for your practice, but obviously it's a significant part of it. For artists out there, particularly painters, who are curious about that process, can you just talk a little bit about it? Of course, every situation is different, but what are some of the challenges that you face bringing your studio practice into the public sphere in that way? And then what are some of the, positives? Maybe we can just do it that way.
Yeah, the challenges are definitely. I mean, there are pluses and negatives, obviously, with most things that you do. Um, yeah, I'll speak on the challenges. I guess first, like the sometimes it can be hard for me to fulfill the vision of the person that's commissioning the work or the public art. I would say that was earlier in my practice when I would get commission work or apply for commission work that had a specific idea that they wanted, and trying to find a way to fit my work into that box can be difficult from time to time. But I'll say over the course of my career and doing more public art and people becoming more aware of my work, the public work that I get now, the commission work that I get now, people know what to expect. They know that they're going to get a Jeremy Okai Davis painting and what that looks like. So it's a little bit easier now. But I'd say for a young artist getting into it, um, yeah, being open, I think, to trying different styles. The I would say the benefit of some of the early commission work that I got was the opportunity to explore things that I wouldn't typically explore, subjects or people that I wouldn't typically explore. So yeah, staying open to that, I think, as a younger artist or as an artist is important. Yeah, the benefits, I'll say, are the amount of eyes that you get on the work. um, I've done a number of commissions for different universities. So being able to put work in universities around students, around kids, around professors, and people that wouldn't typically go into a white wall art gallery or a museum, or wouldn't have it in their mind to do that, are seeing this work, whether they like to or not, whether they like it or not, and hopefully being affected by it and creating art fans, people that are into art, through having fine art, gallery ready fine art in public places. So that's kind of the benefit, I'd say.
And are you, in many cases, having existing work reproduced for these public installations, or are you actually creating the work on site using the materials and the walls or what have you? I'm just curious about that process.
The I've done a couple murals, like outdoor murals, where those are obviously painted onto the walls. Um, that's not my preferred medium, being out in nature, in the world painting. But most of the commissions that I do are done in studio and then installed on site. So they follow the typical protocol of what I'm doing in the studio with my normal work, and then just transferred and delivered to the on-site and installed in that way. I'm trying to think if I've had any. Yeah, I don't think I've ever gone to a site and created a work. It's usually created in my studio and then picked up and delivered and installed. But a lot of the commission work, usually I'll have to do like a site visit just to see what the walls
Hmm.
look like, what the space looks
Hmm.
like. Um, like I'm just finishing up one for public housing in Portland, and they sent me the carpet, like the swatches of like the colors that are in the space, just to make sure that things kind of line up with the colors in the piece, which isn't a typical way of working. Like usually you're kind of doing what you want with the palette, but
Right.
for the public, sometimes you have to consider what's next to it, the couch that's below it, which isn't. I mean, it's not that's not like out of question for even being a gallery artist. Some of the commissions that I get through for public, like private commissions, um, the person might send me like the wall color that they have. So, yeah, those are things that you have to take into consideration. They're a little different than a typical studio practice. Um, Appeasing the commissioner or appeasing the person that's looking for the public art. So yeah, you just have to have a little bit more um, leniency with the vision sometimes.
Well, I think your background as a graphic designer and illustrator probably gives you a good sensibility of what it means to work collaboratively and to work, in relation to a client, right? Which is a different kind of relationship than the relationship to, let's call it a collector, quote unquote. Oftentimes, artists who want to venture into the kinds of relationships that are more client driven will run up against that sort of friction that you just described, where it's like, hey, man, just let me do what I want to do,
Yeah,
which is, all well and good to the extent that you must accept that if you do what you want to do and then the client doesn't like it, well, they
yeah.
have a right to not like it as well. These things are collaborative in nature, but I think there's still some artists who have a difficult time juggling the idea or parsing the idea rather of being a fine artist, painter, but then also doing these quote unquote commercial client driven projects. And I've always felt like if you're able to get opportunities to create work outside of your studio, obviously, and get paid for it, that I always saw that as a net positive.
Oh,
But
100.
I'm also not an artist, right? So I'm curious to hear, have you ever had any sort of conflict around that internally?
Internally, no. I would say maybe early in my career. I would say early when I got to Portland, my idea for my practice was just to be a gallery artist. But I would say I wasn't necessarily aware of the road to being a public artist. I didn't know about the websites that you can go to find these calls for art, or I didn't know about the local. We have a place here called RAC, the Regional Arts and Culture Commission, that posts these public art projects online all the time. Like every week, there's a new. The airport's looking for work, or this library is looking for work. I didn't know about that stuff as a young artist. I thought that I was just going to be in the studio making work and hoping that people find out about me. But it wasn't until I got one of my first public commissions, where it's for the Children's Hospital here in Portland, and I would say that getting that commission and having people that, like I said before, wouldn't typically see my work or wouldn't typically see fine art or see it as fine art in a hospital or library, recognize the work. That's what kind of like it was a switch that flipped on for me. It's like I need to do more of this work just to get it out there. And like you said, the monetary benefit of it, it pays for the work that I want to do in a lot of ways. Like I'll do a handful of public art commissions and get a little bit of cash that gives me the window to create a body of work that's more focused on the presence of color pieces that I've done that aren't for public consumption, aren't public art, and I can do what I want, with that freedom. So playing both sides of the fence. I guess both sides. That doesn't sound net positive, but playing both sides, like doing the public art thing in order to benefit the studio practice. It's necessary for me, and it's a benefit for me.
Do you also still maintain a graphic design practice as well outside of painting?
I do. Yeah. No, I've had just to be completely open. Like I have a full time day job on top of my studio practice. I work as a graphic designer for a publishing company here locally, and I've had that job since I moved here. So
I
yeah,
love
I
that.
still do that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, just to keep it real. I mean, I have a house with a mortgage and two kids, and so I need that that steady income just to again make what I'm doing in the studio not feel as weighted. Like I need to create things that are going to sell. I know that I have this base income that I'm getting every week, every couple weeks, that open me up to be able to play around a little bit more, have a lot more fun in the studio.
Yeah, yeah. I just did a workshop recently for New York Academy of Art, and I got another talk coming up that's more public facing with the same duo, the two women that run the Beyond the Studio podcast, and they do a lot of work around the idea of like professional development for artists and sort of balancing one's career, creative career, with the sort of financial realities of being an artist. So, and it's something that I've spent years working on with artists and organizations as well. To hear you or any artist, talk about the fact that they have this, full time job or even part time job for that matter, that is either related or even unrelated to their creative practice, but it gives them the stability, for lack of a better word, to be able to enter the studio without the pressures of everything sort of being, feeling like I have to make this painting so that it can sell tomorrow so that I can pay my car note next month.
Yeah,
That's a weird kind of pressure for, I believe, an artist to be under, but it's also the reality of a lot of artists' lives.
yeah,
Um, and so I just think it's great to hear an artist talk with confidence and clarity around the fact that being a great artist and being respected as an artist is not the opposite of having these other things going on in one's life, right? I mean, I just think that that's important and it's important for young people to hear in general when they're on the fence about their creative path. Um,
yeah. I give talks every so often, like artist talks, and I'm typically pretty clear that I have this a day job on top of what I'm doing, just to let people know that it's real out here. Like I'm doing these paintings and I'm showing all these places, but I still have to maintain a certain amount of income to make my life or comfortable. And yeah, I think it's important for people to know that, and not to mislead people, because I mean there's most artists that I know, a lot of the artists that I know that are my age have other sources of income, whether it's a day job, full-time job, or they're doing something else with their art practice just to make ends meet. So yeah, I don't want to mislead anybody or mislead people thinking that it's easy being an artist, because yeah, everybody needs a little bit of help.
Can you talk a little bit more about being in Portland, like what that's like? Not not just as an artist, but like even more broadly. But let's start with as an artist. Like what's the community like? What's the vibe like? Are you connecting with other creatives? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, so when I moved away from Charlotte, and I graduated from UNC Charlotte in 2002, I spent about 5 years in Charlotte, trying to get my career off the ground, and I had some shows here and there. But I think the issue that I had, not with Charlotte, but just with me in Charlotte, was that I'd been there my whole life, graduated from there, all my friends were there. The work that I was making, the shows that I was having, was basically just me and my friends. Like showing up for the shows, and I needed to just get myself out of Charlotte just to like restart my career and kind of make myself uncomfortable a little bit. And I had a friend that was living in Portland. I didn't know anything about Portland aside from the Portland Trailblazers. I'm a big basketball fan, but I came to visit in 2006, and the thing that I noticed about it when I came, the main thing that I noticed was the amount of public art, like just seeing the murals everywhere and going to the coffee shops and cafes and seeing like what I have thought at the time was like gallery ready, museum ready, like level quality work in these cafes. And I was like, this seems like the type of place that I could go and reset and restart my career. So I moved here, and immediately I fell in with other people. I was 27 when I came here, other people that were kind of in that same place, artists that um, were just looking for a new start, curators that were looking for a new start. So we were all kind of working together when I got here, just to find places to show and just grinding together. So that was the early community that I found. And it wasn't until I got here, obviously, that I realized that there wasn't a very strong Black community in Portland. I mean, there's a strong Black community, but it just wasn't very large. Um, but over the course of time being here, I think it's gotten stronger. Um, I've fallen into it a little bit more. The work has spoken more to my community and my history and background a little bit, so it's appealed to the Black community a little bit more. But yeah, Portland is an interesting place. I mean, it's I love it. You know, I love the amount of opportunity for artists. I love the strength of the art community. The Black community here is really strong, small but mighty. Um, so it's I mean, it's perfect for me. I've found my partner and had kids, bought a house here, and don't plan to leave. So yeah, it's given me everything that I've needed out of my art career and life at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I can relate to the idea of moving to different places. I've been living in Japan for 5 years now, and I got to tell you, it probably doesn't get much more different between New York, well, Brooklyn and Japan, right? In terms of where I grew up versus where I'm living now, but it also inspires you in different ways to just be anywhere different, whether it's Charlotte to Portland or LA to Chicago or whatever it is. You kind of get a different set of stimuli and you start seeing yourself differently in the world. I'll tell you a little funny story. You'll appreciate this. You're probably a bigger basketball fan than me, but you probably still would think this funny. So, my first time going to Portland was probably, I don't know, like 1999, 2000, around that time. I used to be in advertising before I was a curator, so we have some things in common in terms of like the graphic design communications world. And one of my clients was Adidas, and so we would fly to Portland pretty frequently to have meetings. And in one of
Oh,
our visits there, the and we were working closely with Kobe Bryant. And so one of our meetings or visits there, the Lakers were this close to winning the championship. And my
yeah,
business partner at the time, I don't think he is an insane basketball fanatic. Like, like don't even get him started kind of guy. And we were just about to leave and we're watching the game and he's like, they're going to win. And and I'm like, okay. He's like, so instead of flying back home to New York, why don't we just go to LA like right now and just be in LA when Kobe and the Lakers win? And so we just, you could do that then. We just like, all right, well, we just went to the airport, changed our tickets, and flew to LA so that by the time the parade was coming down of cars, not even the team, coming down Sunset Boulevard, we had just gotten out of LAX just so we could be in the midst of that madness.
yeah,
Like that excitement around the Lakers winning the championship.
that's
But I
great.
haven't been to Portland since then though. So I
Oh,
know it's changed so much, and I have a buddy that moved there not so long ago, who's kind of like telling me a little bit about what life is like there. But it's an interesting city. I mean, I have fond memories, but I know that my memories of Portland, it's got to be so different from then, like so
I'm
different.
sure. Yeah, Portland's it's a great art city. Like I said, the public art is great. I think we have some really good galleries. The art museum just renovated, and it's really beautiful. And yeah, it's a good place for me, man. The food here is amazing. I definitely highly recommend anybody that comes to just try any of the food they can find here. It's a great city for that. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, the food, my memories of the food and what I've heard since then is great. And also the architecture. And it's an important city and it has a history to it that you discussed this a little bit in today's conversation. It has a Black history to it as well, right?
yeah,
As most cities do. that is somewhat unknown to to a lot of people. So work, some of the work you're doing is uncovering that, which I think is really important and key. So we're down to our final couple of minutes here. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what do you have something coming up that obviously the show at the Gantt Center is coming up, but like beyond that, are there things going on the public art side or anything that you can point to?
Well, I will say, yeah, just speaking about the Black history in Portland, I finished a body of work last year that's traveling the Northwest currently. Is currently down in Eugene at the University of Oregon. That's called Re-envisioned. And me and the people that commissioned the work were looking at ways to uncover stories of some of the first Black people to come to Oregon and the Northwest. So there's 10 paintings that I created that are on view now. That kind of highlight a lot of those people and stories, because there were some pretty nasty laws here, exclusion laws here in Oregon for those people. So I wanted to, and we wanted to highlight some of the people that kind of didn't worry about that and came here and started life and had families and created legacies for themselves back in the day. So yeah, there's that exhibition that's up at Eugene for anybody that's watching that's in Oregon. That's up until June. As far as anything coming up, I have a show in December. Like I said, I show with Elizabeth Leach Gallery. I have a new show with her in December. I'm still trying to figure out what that's going to be, but really excited to get into the studio and start doing some research and finding out what that show is going to be. So those are the two main things that I have going on art-wise. And there's a handful of public art things that are happening. There's a print that I just finished for the local jazz radio station here, KMHD, that's going to be available. And I guess depending on when you watch this, it'll be available through KMHD's website soon.
Well, thank you so much. Really enjoyed today's conversation. Excited to see your show at the Gantt Center. Recommend everyone, check it out. And if you're not able to make it to Charlotte, certainly follow the Gantt on social media. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for your time today. I'll get into my final words as usual. The Gantt
Yeah,
Center's
thank you,
goal.
Dexter.
Oh, my pleasure. Absolutely. The Gantt Center's goal is always to provide programs that inform and inspire. The support of viewers like you allows the Gantt to expand its reach and to further develop programs like today's Open Air. Please lend your support to the Gantt Center by visiting ganttcenter.org/donate. Also, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel for future programs and other video content updates. We thank you all for joining us for another great open air conversation, and we look forward to seeing you all next month. Have a great night.